I love introducing you to the personalities that I've chosen. Most of them are people that I've known sometimes for quite a while, and sometimes I may have just met them. But the one thing they all have in common is that when I offer you a personality portrait, it's because they're fascinating people who lead fascinating lives. And for a medical practitioner, I must tell you, Dr. Connie Mariano, there are doctors right now who are watching all over the world who are saying, she had who as a patient? 3 presidents of the United States. Mm-hmm. You were, as your book reminded us, you were the White House doctor. Mm-hmm. What 3?
I started with Bush Sr., George Herbert Walker Bush, the entire Clinton presidency, and then our last president, Bush, for about 6 months. So 3 presidents, 9 years at the White House.
But apparently nobody told you that no Filipino had ever become a rear admiral in the United States Navy. No female had ever been the White House physician, mm-hmm. and no female had ever been the director of White House medicine, the medical unit.
That's correct.
You didn't believe them when they told you you couldn't do those things?
I just did what I had to do. It doesn't matter what the title was. I just did what I had to do.
Yeah, but you must have grown up, though. First of all, I believe you grew up early on in your life in the Philippines and then moved to Hawaii?
I was born in the Philippines. My mother and father were from there, but my father was in the Navy. He was enlisted. So we were stationed in the Philippines when I was born. And then when I was 2, we moved to Pearl Harbor. And I grew up in Hawaii, and I grew up in Washington, D.C., and every 2 to 3 years we traveled.
But who told you that you shouldn't let any barriers stand in the way, in spite of the fact that nobody else had done any of those things in your category?
No one ever told me that. What they did tell me was you're never good enough. And so I just got tired of hearing that. And I said, well, if I'm never good enough, I might as well do what I want to do, which is pursue the things that I did. And I think one advantage to being the underdog, you never want to be down there anymore. You want to strive and succeed. You never want to be poor again. You never want to be nothing again. So it forced you to move on.
But there are successful physicians, and then there's the White House physician, mm-hmm. the doctor to the President of the United States. Does the Secret Service ever get in the way?
No, they don't. You go through a clearance process with security to make sure that you have nothing in your background. You have no skeletons, you have no terrorist connections where you might kill the president because of your proximity.
Yeah, Al-Qaeda probably would not look good
no.
if you're applying for
That's
that kind of a job.
That's a showstopper. You don't get a security clearance.
But your security must be a little tougher even mm-hmm. than almost anybody else.
Mm-hmm. You have the highest security clearance that anybody gets. It's called a Yankee White, because you have the ability, because of your clearance, to go upstairs to the presidential bedroom, knock on their door, and say, hello, I'm here to do my house call.
But you also say to the President of the United States, excuse me, drop your pants now.
Mm-hmm. Sir.
Dr.
Sir.
Yes, sir, drop your pants. Dr. Mariano, that's one of those peculiar kinds of juxtapositions mm-hmm. in which you are an American in awe of the office, mm-hmm. and you've seen all of the person who occupies that office.
Sometimes too much. But you have to respect them as a person, and then you have to say, why am I here? I'm here to do my job.
Yeah.
And if I treat him like any other patient, then I'm doing my job.
Tell me about each of them, each of the 2 Bushes and President Clinton as a patient.
President Bush Sr. was like taking care of your dad. Very respectful, same age as my father, very respectful, listened to you, never questioned. Bill Clinton was like taking care of your big brother, who said he'd listen, but was very non-compliant. So you have to go to his wife, the First Lady, and say, you know, your husband isn't listening, so she will, you know, try to support you. And then last President Bush, I really didn't see him very much. He listened to the doctors there. He's very compliant, very, very helpful. But my challenge was Bill Clinton.
All right, you said you could always go, though, to his wife, the First Lady. Mm-hmm. But how much can you tell about the condition of the President of the United States, a condition that might have a major effect on the entire country?
Well, obviously you have HIPAA there, where you cannot expose or disclose things without the permission of the patient. But if there's something going on with the health of the president that can impact the way he performs his job, let's say mental illness, substance abuse, anything physical that may hinder his ability, use of his mind, then you're obligated to get medical help that's appropriate, and then you're obligated to say something. It's as though you had a pilot on a jet who is incapacitated, and unless you speak up and ground him, you're going to kill a bunch of people.
But where do you draw that line? If you had been JFK's president, and JFK, now we know, was on a surprising number of painkillers because of his back, we have been told by some people who have deduced that he might have been impaired as a result of that. When do you decide somebody else has to know because the president doesn't want me to tell the nation?
Well, one thing during Kennedy, they didn't have the 25th Amendment. It came into play after Kennedy. It was under Johnston regarding succession. In the case of a president who was incapacitated in some way, had a problem like drugs, and if you as the doctor found out, you have to confront him, you have to let the First Lady know, and you have to say, sir, I have to get you help, but because I'm concerned about your ability to perform your job, I have to recommend you institute the 25th Amendment, meaning you turn over the position temporarily to the vice president. Now, it's never been done, and you can probably be fired as a White House doctor, but that sends a big red flag. If you are fired or if you resign, the press is going to want to know what happened. So it's hard to keep secrets now as it was easier years ago, because the press is 24 hours. If the president so much as stutters or has a tremor in his hand, the whole press is on top of that. Everyone's going to know what's wrong with the president.
Is your responsibility also the first family?
It's also the first family. You take care of the first family, you take care of the vice president and his family, take care of a lot of people, but your primary one is the president. But as a military officer, you also raise your hand to support and defend the Constitution, meaning if the president is incapacitated, you need to say something about it.
Did Barbara Bush pay any attention to what you suggested to her?
She listened, but my colleague before me, when George Sr. had his vomiting in the Prime Minister's residence, and they said, I don't think he should do this event, Mrs. Bush. The doctor actually, to his defense, went to Mrs. Bush, and she says, oh, don't worry, he'll be okay.
Dr. Connie Mariano, one of the most fascinating people that I know in the world of medicine, having spent a number of years in the most fascinating job in medicine as the White House president, Dr. Connie Mariano. Now you understand why it is that I wanted to introduce you to her as Pat's personal portrait this week on KTAR.com.